Okay, I think we are live. Yay! I'm here. We're back with Talking Saratoga, another episode, our 11th episode, and we are reunited with our co-host Adam Israel and Dan DiFederici, of course. And welcome to Talking Saratoga. It's our weekly podcast with the latest insight and discussion about all the latest shenanigans happening in this crazy city. And you guys, I got to tell you, I'm a little tired today because it has been a wild few days. There has been a lot going on. But first, Adam, welcome back. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you. I know, good to be back on the American soil.
I was going to say, when did you fly? You just flew in, did you not?
Yeah. I got in. Late 2 days ago, very late. So yesterday, really, I guess, got home. So good to be back.
Well,
my wife and kids are happy. I'm happy to see them. So good to be here.
Well, we're happy you're back, and I'm embarrassed that I was the late one today, considering you're the one that should be completely.
Well, I'm 6 hours ahead right now, so for me, it's.
I was just going to say, you look. If I did the traveling you did and the work you did over in Poland, I would look exhausted right now. Good for you. You look alert and everything. God bless you for everything you're doing, and you're coming out of this strong. God bless you.
Yeah, well, the train goes off the wheels probably around 4 p.m. And so,
all right. So let's do a really long broadcast. I kind of want to see what that looks like.
Yeah.
So just some quick headlines, and then I want to bring in our first guest. In the last 24 hours alone, guys, we have a new city council person. A new commissioner of public works that we will talk about, which is pretty exciting and interesting. There was a lot of little drama going around last night when that was announced at the city council meeting. We also have a new civilian review board, which I think most people are unaware of. It was voted on last night. And we also had yesterday, Gaffney's, which we've been talking about on the show, had their liquor license pulled. And the subject of Caroline Street and nightlife and downtown kind of craziness has come up once again. And I wanted to jump in and bring in our first guest, Robert Millis, who is on with us right now. Let's see.
There he is.
Hey.
Bob, can you hear us? Hey, how are you?
I'm sitting here listening to the new Arcade Fire album. Does that mean anything to you? It means nothing to you. Come on.
No, but it sounds
Arcade
lovely.
Fire, I do know. I do know Arcade Fire.
You do?
I do. Bob has, by the way, several small businesses, but he's really an expert in the music and concert, live music genre, I would say. Bob, is that correct? Is that an accurate statement?
That's probably my most active micro business. I have 4 or 5 small little, operations. That's my bread and butter. Yeah, I do. On the micro level, I do concerts. I do music festivals. And on the macro level, I advise communities into building live music infrastructure economies.
Well, we are delighted to have you. And I know that you were at the city council meeting last night and made a public comment. And I wanted to just maybe start there and see if you would share kind of some of what you addressed with the city council last night, because it did pertain to what we are all talking about on Caroline Street, a subject that has come up, year after year, but maybe with a little more intensity over the last year.
Well, I made my comments because of the timing. As we know, the Daphne's issue has been playing the past couple days in reaction to the latest incident down there. And first the city kind of started playing hardball with Gaffney's by shutting them down temporarily because of alleged bounced checks. Which they seem to use an excuse to just slap them around a little bit. But then, more important, the State Liquor Authority pulled their license late yesterday. And
just let me, Bob, real quick, let me just so for our viewers who maybe aren't following this as closely as we are, Gaffney's has had some violations last year with the SLA, which is the State Liquor Authority. And there have also been a few incidents where there have been stabbings or incidents of violence that have been either inside or outside, just outside of Gaffney's. There was a recent stabbing on Saturday or early Sunday night, morning, which prompted the city to pull their license temporarily. They said that code enforcement, they had bounced a check for their eating and drinking license for $435. And so there was a temporary pulling of their license, but then the SLA came out with a very long and strongly worded statement yesterday from New York State pulling their liquor license. So that's kind of where we are. Bob, would you say that's inaccurate?
Yeah, and I think we have to realize when the state liquor authority has a hearing on the status of a licensee's operation, more often than not, they get input from the city it's located in. So I think we can confidently assume that the city was involved in that discussion that took place, resulting in the liquor authority pulling that license.
That is absolutely true. Yes,
yeah,
because
I've actually represented bars in that situation, defending the bar against that. So I know how that process works, unfortunately, rather intimately. But my purpose yesterday, to answer your question, is I was kind of saying, okay, good. I think this is kind of good stuff. I personally think it's beneficial for the city to start getting a little bit more involved in this, as opposed to thinking this problem magically gets solved by the bars themselves. But I wanted to just bring up the point where, I personally think, yes, Gaffney's is a problem, but I don't want this, to think this is going to solve an awful lot, hitting Gaffney's over the head, because Gaffney's is not the problem. It's just like going to Google Map. You look at a town, but then you pull back a little bit. I think that's what we got to do on this. This is a Caroline Street area problem, not so much a Gaffney's problem. Again, yes, Gaffney's is a major player. The king rat of the rat pack, if you will. So they kind of deserve what they're getting. But I think the mistake that gets made out there by the community, and yes, by past city hall regimes, is we're really not addressing the key issue. The key issues here are how do we change the culture, the infrastructure, the what's going on down there, and that hasn't been taking place. And I think a lot of that blame has to fall, quite honestly, on past city councils. They haven't picked up the ball and done what they need to do. It's been a whack-a-mole type of thing. Oh, let's argue over how many decibels the noise ordinance should be. Let's talk about closing hours. Let's.
But Bob, I guess the $1 million question here is what is the steps the city can take, the Caroline Street bar owners can take to address this? Because obviously nobody likes that, waking up Sunday morning and going to social media and seeing pictures of violence on the street and blood running down Caroline Street. So what's the low-hanging fruit that can be done to address this, that you think?
Well, as a guy who made his living when I was in the real world, I was in the software industry for 25 years, and my niche became I fixed broken software companies. And there's a 5-step process that you go through before we answer the question that you just posed. What you just posed is question 5. I think we have to get consensus on first, step 1, is there a problem? There's people in this town that don't think there's a problem down there. They think because the blood gets washed from the street by the time the people are walking their dogs in the morning, that it's not a problem. Step 2 is those of us that think there is a problem. What is the problem? And again, we don't have consensus there. It seems to be that the conversation is the problem is people getting stabbed. I argue it's more than that. It's more than just the top level violence. It's the wide variety of antisocial activity that takes place down there on a massive scale. That's high level violence, low level pushing, shoving, spitting, pissing, puking, drunks, noise. I think if we identify that as the problem and then say, why is it a problem? Because quality of life, public safety, public civic branding, and the causes. I think if we take an honest look, the cause of it down there is what I call nightclub culture. The history of this town, which I've kind of written about the past few weeks in a 3-part story I fed to some media outlets, including Dan's. There's a history of Caroline Street, and the more recent history in the past 10 years has seen an acceleration of patio culture to nightclub culture. and it's caused problems. There's too many people. There's the wrong people down there. And to drill down.
Can I jump in, Rob?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt you. I had a point right on your point.
Go.
Let you finish that, and if I could jump in afterwards.
All right. Well, I think we have to get consensus first on what the causes are. I just listed what I think of the causes. Too many people and too small a footprint. They're the wrong kind of people we should be attracting to this town. And 3, I think we got to stop this nightclub culture, this Jersey Shore mentality of what Caroline Street has become. And there's ways to do that. And to answer your question, Adam, I think there's tools in the toolbox of the city government to do that. It's not the bar owners. You kind of said, what can the bar owners do? I think we've waited on the bar owners long enough to solve this problem. It hasn't happened. The free market has not solved this problem on their own. It's the proper role of government now to step in and do something. And I'm hoping the current city council will finally do it. There are things they can do in city code. Back to noise ordinance. I think the city should declare a noise ordinance of 0 decibels instead of 92 or 96. Literally,
it's like a library environment.
After 10 o'clock, I think the outside noise should end at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. I think it should be cut down to 0 instead of 96, whatever you think it is. I think there's capacity issues. I think there's a patio hour kind of things in code. I also think we can take an economic development approach to fixing this problem. If this was an open sewer down there, we would put economic incentives in place to get non-sewer type of activity down there. I think we should, as a city, work towards making that something other than a bar district, as it was 20, 30, 50 years ago. That can be done through economic and tax incentives.
Wait, Bob, I'm going to pause you for 1 second, just because you've said so many.
Yes,
there's been so much stuff just in that one answer.
Wait, Dan's ahead of you.
Yeah, Dan, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Rob, I just want to go back to a point, and you touched on it, and like Rob said, you've covered so much in a short time because you've got such grasp of the history here. From my perspective, and if any of you disagree with me, tell me so. But it seems like the recent things, usually centered around Gaffney's, or at least accused to be Gaffney's, involves, let's face it, there's been drunkenness since John Morrissey was fixing horse races in 1868. But this is a new level that I haven't seen too much of in Saratoga, involving guns and stabbings. I'm not saying there have never been stabbings down there, but it's like, the stabbing of the month. And again, if I'm overstating it, fine. But it seems like there's a lot more. In fact, I'll take away the qualification. There is a lot more of it in recent times of very violent crimes involving deadly weapons that I don't recall happening with such frequency based on the one location, or at least purportedly one location, than 10 years ago. Am I right or wrong on that?
Can I jump in on that real quick, Bob, if you don't mind? I would say that there hasn't necessarily been an uptick in violence. There has just been a shift in how we take in information. And so while 10 years ago, you wouldn't be seeing, like, almost in live time, a stabbing on social media or violence on social media, we now have the social media beast. And so these things are just pushed out to an audience that weren't necessarily seeing them as quickly or as often as they were in the past. That would be my kind of take on it. I don't know if, Bob, you would agree. And Adam, obviously, I want you to weigh in too.
I would disagree with you. I think there's more people down there. I think we can agree on that. There's more people down there than there were 10, 15 years ago. And I think a good deal of that has been brought about by opening up patios to people. 20 years ago, there weren't patio down there. There are now. But also just, the marketing of this town as having the quote, exciting downtown midnight, and here they are. But to Dan's point, I don't think that's the way we should frame this problem, Dan. Yeah, there are more violent incidents happening, but how many stabbings are there? Are we talking 2, 3, 4 a year? How many deaths are there? Somewhere between 0 and 1 or 2. I think if we focus just on solving that, it still leaves every other problem down there. 100 pushing and shoving incidents a night, 3 or 4 fist fights, drunks, everything else. I think the mistake we make is we're trying to solve just the very upper echelon of the problem. And if we define it as that, yes, we can solve it with 50 more cops down there. Okay. But again, that costs a lot of money to do that. We know it costs about $2,000 per hour in sales tax to put one cop down there. But I think what we need to do is we got to, back to defining the problem. Defining the problem here is there's a wide variety of antisocial activity and behavior, and it all needs to be under control.
Yeah, my take on it, my feeling from growing up here and spending a lot of time on Caroline Street. I'm old enough to remember the block party, right? And Caroline Street, when they had to close that because it got out of hand and they couldn't control it. I'm old enough to remember when the City Tavern was a vacant building. So the idea of Robert, I would disagree with you. The idea of making it something other than a kind of a mini Bourbon Street, I don't think there's precedent for that, because I remember when it was abandoned buildings. It wasn't an economic hub. It was empty buildings.
I remember it was a hub. There were grocery stores down there. There were barber shops. There was a wide variety of businesses. My grandmother lived right above it, and I used to look out her apartment window, and I used to see economic activity that was not centered around, 1 a.m. nightclubs.
Yeah. Well,
so would we agree that we're talking about basically this general discussion of symptoms versus cause, right? And I see a lot of people talking about symptoms and not cause.
Yeah. Well, I think I agree with you, Robin. I think the one point I want to get in about the level of violence, there's always been violence down there. I think now we're seeing the introduction of knives, and I can never remember a stabbing. There were deaths. There were tragic incidents where some guy was in the wrong place, wrong time, got hit by a car, got hit with a fist. That happened. But I just don't recall guns being fired in Saratoga or people being stabbed on Caroline Street, and certainly not at the level it's having. So back to your point, Robin, what's the cure?
Well, I would just say every death that I am aware of, I've lived here since 2008, has always been fueled by alcohol. It has always been people who have been highly, highly intoxicated who end up getting into an altercation with someone that results in a death, whether it's they are hit by a car because someone's angry and has just walked out of a bar, or an assault that's happened just outside, like we saw this last summer with Clancy's, or not with Clancy's, but with patrons that were in Clancy's and then moved outside, and a gentleman was killed, and it was truly tragic. But again, all fueled by people who were really, really highly intoxicated, may or may not have also been on drugs. There's so much to kind of unpack here, Bob, with what you said. One of the things that I wanted to bring up, though, because this has been a huge source of controversy when I was on the city council, now in public discourse, is that we're bringing in the wrong kind of people. And Bob, I know it was something that you and I kind of sparred on last year, because I think I was misunderstanding you. But now I think I have a understanding of what you mean when you say that. But I think it's something that's important for us to talk about here, because often that wrong kind of people is perceived as we're talking about people of color, people who are not white, people are coming up here, as Commissioner Montanino kind of misspoke and said, because of rap music is bringing in the unsavory people. And so I think that's kind of an important point to touch on, and would love to get everyone's thoughts on that.
My thought is it's the bringing in the young bucks. If you look at the crowd that Gaffney's did attract before, when it was Mr. Baker who owned it, it wasn't the young the young males who are full up on testosterone, ready to
bros.
The bros, exactly. So that's when we talk about the wrong crowd, the wrong people, that's who I see. It's an age thing. It's a are we attracting, because 21-year-olds to 30-year-olds are gonna they're gonna get drunk, they're gonna fight, and if that's our concentration, that's people who we're attracting to our city, that's what we're gonna get. So I would like to see it change more, stay kind of a party atmosphere, but more of an adult party atmosphere, where it's not the hyped up Jersey Shore, Gia Lift Bros kind of crowd. But that would be my 2 cents.
Dan, can I have Dan weigh in?
It is such a delicate balance here. You really, we need to the extent that Gaffney's is culpable, we need to hold them accountable. To the extent that patrons are are vulnerable. We need to hold them accountable. Then we have to tiptoe that we don't want to be accused of being racist. And what Rob says about the jersey, I think that was great, Rob. You told me once, it's a white-black thing. It's the mindset. It's not one race. It's the mindset that we're dealing with here. But it's so difficult. But at the same time, I think we have to take a bold stand because it's happening. Deadly violence. When you're bringing out knives and guns, that's deadly. We need to take a stand on that, and we're all tiptoeing, and rightfully so. But well, at least I feel I am. I'm trying to find that perfect balance where I can hold entities and people accountable, and not be accused of being a racist.
So I think, sorry, Bob. I just want to say this is what I love about this platform, though, is that we are all here to share our opinions, and whether we disagree or agree, we can do it respectfully and, speak our mind. And I think this is one of those issues where we really need to be able to speak our mind openly. And I know that we're all here with good intentions to try to solve this problem. I don't think you can blame one single demographic. I don't necessarily think this is a young people problem. I just think that we have, for the last many years, set an example of people come here. It's been getting increasingly intense in how they're partying and what they're doing, and the crowds are getting bigger and bigger. And we haven't really held people accountable for their bad behavior, for the assaults, the misdemeanor stuff that's happening. We're just kind of babysitting to make sure things don't explode. And so I think people think they can come here, get wasted, fight in the street, drink in the street, puke, and there's no repercussion. There's no accountability. And so I think we've kind of set this mindset of like, yeah, this is the place to play. Come, party, go nuts. You're going to be fine. You'll see some police officers, but most likely they just want you to de-escalate and walk away. And so I just think we haven't been holding people accountable the way we should have.
A couple reactions. First, to Adam's point, it's not an age thing, Adam. It's not a demographic challenge we have here. It's a psychographic challenge. I use the example. We could put 300 25-year-olds into Putnam Place to watch a live music show tomorrow, and there's not going to be a single problem because the psychographic of that crowd is different than what we were all already calling the Jersey Shore psychographic of 25-year-olds that frequents Caroline Street. It's a different breed of cat. They act differently, which is to what Robin is saying. But to both Dan and Robin's point, disagree. This is not a law enforcement solution.
Yeah, I agree, Bob. I agree with you.
This is not hammering down, holding people accountable, everything else. We have to just stop branding that area and setting up an infrastructure that supports that type of branding that brings this psychographic in. I'm doing a history search. 40 years ago, Lake George, New York had this problem. They had violence, they had fights, they had a riot. A mayor came in. He says, we're going to change the people we attract to this town because this is a problem. And he went about doing it. I'm waiting an interview with that mayor to get some of his tips on it. But it's the proper role of a community. It's government and it's tourist business organizations to define what kind of activity they want to host. And I'm just making the recommendation. My opinion is that we're hosting the wrong crowd, and we got to stop taking this. It's all good as long as the tax receipts keep coming in, maximizing, the number of feet on the ground here. I think the collateral damage from that attitude is catching up to us, and we got to, get a different crowd down there. And again, that's not law enforcement.
If I could jump in real quick. I see it differently than you. It's almost like you're punishing all the other bars. Right now, it seems to be a Gaffney's issue. It's always been loud and boisterous and fights, fist fights, and so forth. This is a new level we're talking about here, and you want to change the whole city. Let's face it. That horse left the barn, to use a Saratoga term. Caroline Street is not going to change that much.
You just said two different things. You said
a lot of money there.
You just said two different things. You said it's always been like that, but then you say it's a whole new thing.
Wait, let me hop in real quick, guys.
There's never been this level of nonsense going on in the history of that area. This has been a 10-year cycle that has just accelerated. It's now hypercharged with this nightclub scene, and I think we got to back up and rebrand the area and, stop getting the quantity of people down there, the type of people we're getting down there, and the environment we have.
Can I just jump in quick? I am going to guess that of the four of us, I have spent the most time sober on Caroline Street over the last few years at 2 a.m. assessing the public safety and what's going on. I'm just taking a stab. Now, some people know I live on Lower Caroline. I live on the block in between Henry Street and Circular Street. So I'm literally a stone's throw from all of this with my 4 little kids. And I've lived there for 12 years. And I have to say, without question, this last summer especially, I was waking up on Saturdays in the summer, 2 a.m., to go out and do a loop and see what was going on so I could speak to it based on my own experience, soberly, clear eyes. And last summer, the level of intensity and the amount of people who were here, it was the first time in my life I've ever felt uncomfortable and nervous for my own safety walking around ever. I grew up in New York City. I have never felt unsafe in New York City. I felt unsafe walking around on Caroline Street at 2 a.m. on a Saturday because every single place I looked, every dark corner, every alleyway, every doorway, there was sketchy shit going on that in a normal circumstance, if it was just that one incident, would have been addressed by law enforcement. But in this case, I mean, there's too many people, too few law enforcement officers to necessarily respond to the laws and things that are being broken. And so they're just focusing on the biggest events or the biggest issues. We also have a small amount of officers that are actually covering a 28 square mile city. So actually calls do come in from places like Geyser Crest or out by Meadowbrook that need to be addressed and aren't getting necessarily timely responses because the officers we do have are usually focused on the Caroline Street area. But I would challenge anyone to a debate on like whether or not this has the intensity of partying and kind of atmosphere of violence has increased, because I just can tell you without question, it has. It is different in a way that's hard to define. I think anyone who questions that, I extend an open invitation. We'll meet downtown at 2 a.m. on the corner of Henry and Caroline, and I will walk you around myself this summer so you can see it for your own eyes. Because if you haven't seen it, you just don't understand what we're dealing with.
Hey guys, I know this is a really interesting topic. We could probably do the whole show on it. We got a lot to cover. There was a city council meeting last night, so I think maybe Robert, thank you very much for coming on. That was a really
well. You know what?
Before he goes, I got something before.
Yeah, can we do? No, can we just do a quick if we all wanted to solve this, what would be your first go-to action to solve this problem before we wrap up? Adam, is that cool?
Yeah. Yep.
And I want to ask Rob one last thing before we go. We're very quick.
All right, go ahead, Dan. Ask Rob.
Rob, before you go, well, wait a minute. Let's do Robin's round robin. No pun intended. And then I want to ask Rob something on a completely different subject.
Yeah. So, Bob, what would be your first, if you had all the authority, all the power, you could do whatever you wanted, what would be the first step you would take to address the issue on Caroline Street?
I would. I'm going to say two. It's a tie, so I'm going to give you two things. A, I would shut down the outside outdoor party thing, as I said. No noise after 10 o'clock. But I would also come up with economic development funds to rebrand that downtown and put money in people's pockets to do something other than open up nightclubs.
Okay. Dan.
And I got to give Rob credit. He is looking comprehensively at the issue, and I probably looking at it too narrowly only because the headlines of the day. But right now, to me, and Rob's point, I endorse those generally. But right now, to me, we can't ignore Gaffney's. It's a problem, and we need to address it. Track season is coming. There are very violent acts there, and then get to Rob's issues of the bigger picture.
Adam?
Yeah, mine is kind of two parts. One is do what the city's doing. I think I'm a big free market guy, but and I really hope the free market would have solved this. It hasn't. It's getting worse. Robert said this. So if you start hitting the problem establishments in the pocketbook, they're going to start to react. And I hate to see government regulation. It's the last straw, but it's out of control now. And the second thing is what Robin and Dan were referring to. I would like to see more broken window policing, that if you're going to come here, you're going to sell drugs, you're going to bring knives, you're going to fight in the street, you're going to go to jail. And so that, that's by supporting our law enforcement. I do believe we need more boots on the ground. I need more proactive policing, and that really kind of set the tone of this is not the Wild West on Caroline Street. It is a place to come and have fun. But if you break the law, if you engage in these activities, there will be accountability and repercussions.
I'm going to quickly say that I would do, first, I would take the step that the city council took last summer, which was to vote to close the bars at 2 a.m. Of course, we know that's kind of an impossible scenario, though, because the entire county has to sign off on that, and the county board of supervisors has no interest in taking up that issue. I know, Bob, you disagree with me on that one, but I would take that as just an easy, quick, Adam, you say low-hanging fruit. That would be my low-hanging fruit, closing at 2 a.m. I would also restore the police department to adequate, healthy levels of staffing, not because I think more police officers on Caroline Street are going to solve the problem. I actually think right now what's happening are people are being, kicked out of a bar, being asked to leave. They're furious. They take their fight onto the street. Then the police are called. The police show up, and that's just fuel to the fire right now. And so I don't necessarily think like beefing up security and beefing up how visible the police department is on Caroline Street is the answer. But I do think we need to set some examples and hold people accountable for their actions. And I think collectively, we all need to stop finger pointing. The good news right now, though, is that Gaffney's is closed. So we have an opportunity to see if, Dan, your theory is right. Is Gaffney's the problem? I don't think it is. I think it's a symptom, not a cause. But we're about to find out because it's not going to be open. And we can see if there's a difference in the activity on Caroline Street.
Great. The last thing I wanted to ask, or I'm done with that, I just want to briefly, Rob, if you could give a teaser, and we should have you back on a future show. As far as you're doing some exciting things, you're a visionary. I sat with you once, and you threw more ideas at me in an hour-long coffee. Tell us briefly about New Year's Eve, and then we'll come back to you in a future week, and you can talk more about it.
Yeah, there will be a press conference in a few weeks by the City Hall folks announcing a bunch of initiatives, downtown type of hospitality initiatives. And the secret is out. First night will be back this year. I'm quarterbacking that initiative with a great bunch of local organizations, tourist-based organizations, plus Commissioner Moran and City Hall. It's back. It's under a new name. And just to give you a preview, it's going to be huge. We're going big time. We're going 2 days. We're going national Grammy type of entertainment. We're going to have a whole lot of fun. Stay tuned. There'll be a press conference.
Bob, you want to hire me to do security?
No.
That's good because I probably stink at it.
I'm going to hire all the out of work Gaffney security guys. How's that?
Perfect. Bob, thank you so much for coming on. We could have this conversation again. I could probably talk about this for hours, but we'd love to have you back.
Yeah,
we'll
thanks,
all have a break and continue there. Thanks.
Perfect. Right. Thanks so much. All right. Well, there's just so much there, you guys. I mean, I really could talk about that for just, hours on end probably. And I really appreciate Bob's insight, and I thank him for coming on. Should we get to the other kind of big headlines here? We have a new, Dan, I hope that's not you walking off in protest.
No, I had the heater on in my office, and I'm boiling here.
Yes, I have the same issue in my office. So as you all know, Commissioner Skip Saratoga, who is our beloved Department of Public Works Commissioner, tragically passed away from cancer last month. As a result, the City Council has the authority to appoint a new City Council member in the interim to serve to the remainder of this year. The process that the City Council put in place to do this was, in my opinion, a bit rushed. And although they said it was super transparent, I didn't find it to be very transparent because I had such a hard time finding out information about it. But essentially what they did was they appointed about a week and a half ago a group of 5 people who were Barbara Thompson from the League of Women Voters, Kristen Dart, who is a local Saratogian and involved in a lot of different causes and areas. Alexis Brown, who is from Saratoga BLM, Tim Holmes, who is the former Republican mayoral candidate in the 2019 cycle, although not endorsed by the Republicans. And who am I leaving off here? Oh, John Frank, our former Commissioner of Accounts. They said that was a nonpartisan group. Dylan Moran was quoted as saying it was a nonpartisan group. That's it. I could get into that more, but suffice to say, it wasn't a nonpartisan group. I don't know if it was the right group or wrong group to be making a decision on this. I'm not sure what all 5 people knew about the Department of Public Works and the responsibilities that come along with that position. But nonetheless, they met this past Friday night from about 5:45, I think, to about 8:30 maybe, and had on all 3 people who were applying for this appointment, who were Billy McTighe, Anthony Sirocco, who is Commissioner Sirocco's son, and the person who Commissioner Sirocco had hoped would fill his shoes, and is also a supervisor in the Department of Public Works right now. And then also Jason Golub, who is an attorney and also was most recently the chairperson of the police collaborative group that was put together for Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 203. He chaired that group. And so those were the 3 people. They were interviewed on Friday night. That was live streamed. I couldn't find it took me forever to find the live stream because I couldn't watch it live because, I mean, it was Friday night. I don't know, couldn't watch it live. But I finally found the live stream last night. I haven't fully watched it yet, but that group met the candidates on Friday, got together on Saturday, wrote up a report, submitted the report to the city council on Sunday or Monday with their recommendations. And they unanimously recommended Jason Golub to be the next Commissioner of Public Works. At last night's city council meeting, there was a lot of kind of drama about it, and I'll get to some of it. But basically what happened was that the mayor had on his agenda this appointment, and he asked all the city council people to go around and say who they wanted to appoint based on the committee's recommendations. They all unanimously said they wanted to appoint Jason Golub. And so last night there was a discussion and vote, and he was confirmed as our next Department of Public Works Commissioner. And I know we all have opinions about this, but I do want to congratulate him because he is going to be the first Black city council person that we've had in the city's history. And that's a big deal. And he's also a very intelligent, capable, and I think well-intentioned community member. And I applaud him for stepping in and taking this on because it's going to be tough one way or the other. And so first, I just want to congratulate him. So congratulations to Jason or Commissioner Golub. But I also wanted to bring up some of the kind of controversies that came up last night. Although first, you guys want to weigh in at all about the process and how we got to last night?
First of all, we should thank the committee for doing its work and making the recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like they really made an effort at being transparent. You're pointing out maybe it didn't work out as well as it should have, but I'll give them credit for an effort. But I don't want this podcast to be the Let's Beat Up Jim Montanino show. But last night at City Hall, he said the committee's recommendation meant nothing to me.
Nothing. Nothing.
I was like, Jim, you were just touting your Ivy League education, and ever so not so subtly a few minutes ago. You couldn't have packaged that a little better. They did a lot of work, and you just disregarded them.
He literally said they mean nothing to me. I make my own decisions based on my own research. I haven't met any of these 3 people, but here's what I think. I mean, it was really a little bit rude. And one of the points he made was one of the things that also Mayor Kim talked about that I found to be so frustrating, which is that the commissioners are part-time positions. All of the commissioners and mayor, they're all written into the city charter as part-time positions. The deputies are meant to be the full-time people working in City Hall, managing departments. The way it works out is, public safety and public works usually, I was probably working 70 hours a week. I mean, it's just not a part-time job. But that's how it's advertised, and that's how it's put out. Jim Montanino and Ron Kim both said their big concerns about Jason Golub, even though it was their recommendation, was that he couldn't work full-time. And they just kind of went on and on about that. And I just found that to be unnecessary, rude, and also not the fault of the people applying for the part-time position. You know what I'm saying? Am I the only one that found that frustrating?
I'll let Adam go.
Well, the angle I would have that is the commissioner of finance who beat me, Commissioner Shangvi, is a full-time professor. So we either have to accept that these are part-time jobs or not. And they ran with her knowing she was a full-time professor. That was okay then. What has changed now with him having a job as an attorney? So that to me seems a little hypocritical that they would make an argument out of that, since one of the sitting members of city council has a quote unquote 9 to 5.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I wasn't as, and I don't have the insight both of you have. I wasn't as bothered by it because I did seem to understand to some degree that, and keep in mind, this is brand new to him, especially the commissioner role. He doesn't know the department like his two competitors. So there's a ramp up, and I don't know the flexibility he has in his job, but it sounds daunting to me to have a pretty important corporate job and then be the brand new commissioner learning this department. The fact is they did vote for him, and they really gave him a lot of accolades prior to mentioning, I did have concerns with the fact that he would be part-time. I didn't think they were putting him down. I thought that was just an honest assessment on a person they seem to wholeheartedly endorse and vote for.
But Dan, how can you say it's like, if you advertise a part-time position, you have people come in and interview for it, and then you're like critiquing someone for not being available full-time? It's like, why don't you critique the charter then and say, like, we really need to address the charter and the compensation and the hours? Like, that's what you talk about.
Hey, Robin, let me ask you, because one thing I learned through running for that position was the weight of the position really falls on the deputy. So is Jason I'm sure he has his will to bring in a deputy of his choice.
He's keeping the current deputy, Joe O'Neill. So that is great. He does not want to change any of the appointments or positions or employees. He's going to keep the current structure, which I think is great.
That's good. I've heard a lot. I don't know Joe, but I've heard a lot of good things that he does.
He's awesome.
So I know you probably work.
He's awesome.
His first decision, Jason knocked it out of the park, right, Robin?
Yes, correct. Yes, Joe O'Neill, you are a star. You are great. All of the DPW leadership and employees are phenomenal. Mike Veach is the business manager over there. He does a tremendous job. They really are a well-oiled machine. But, I think one of the big issues last night was that Billy McTighe is someone who the McTighe family has been involved in Saratoga. And between Billy and Tommy McTighe, they have both been on the city council for a tremendous period of time, years and years and years and years. And both have a lot of familiarity with DPW. And last night, Tommy McTighe was there, and he made a public comment and got really angry because he thought that his brother Billy should have been appointed as the interim commissioner because, in his words, it would have been seamless to take over the department and run it from now through the end of the year. And the fact that he was criticizing the committee and the council for not choosing Billy and choosing someone who doesn't know how the department runs, who then is going to be facing an election, a special election this November. He then got a little more heated and basically committed to Billy McTighe running this November. And he intimated that he will get the Democratic nomination. And he felt, really sure that will happen. So he then said, so Jason Golub is not going to be on the ballot this November because Billy's going to run. He's going to get the Democratic nomination and I'm going to self-fund his entire campaign. So he kind of came out he came out swinging. And Billy in his interview had said he was not interested in running in November. He just wanted to serve as an interim commissioner. So I don't know if they're not talking or what, but he made a promise last night that kind of felt a little threatening. And so the city council, a lot of the city council members, when they were talking about this, all really started hedging and, doing a lot of complimenting to the McTighes, which I'm sure is deserved in many ways, but it didn't feel necessarily appropriate last night. To me, it felt like a lot of politicians hedging so they could try to minimize the conflict within their own Democratic committee, which, we know the McTighes are involved in, and all these folks are really, to me, it's like their number one priority is protecting the integrity of their Democratic committee versus doing what's best for the city. But any thoughts on that?
It's going to be an interesting election then. We certainly this fall and then the following fall when all the seats are up, right? All this will carry over.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to an election that I can watch instead of be a part of a city council election. So it's good that it's a very unfortunate circumstances, but I'm looking forward to having a kind of a mini one, this next fall. So. It'll give us a lot to talk about, if nothing else.
It will. I just would hate to see the Department of Public Works have to go through 3 different kind of administrations, so to speak, within the course of such a short period of time. I think it's really disruptive,
And
to
Mr.
have
Golub
to.
has committed to running already, correct, Robin?
Yes, he has. That is correct. So Commissioner-elect, I'm going to call him. I don't know if I don't think he's been sworn in quite yet, but Commissioner-elect Golub has said that he is going to run in November. So he is planning on campaigning and continuing in that position. Billy McTighe apparently now is as well. We know the Republicans, I believe, are going, and I think Anthony has said this, Anthony Saratoga Jr. is also planning on running as the Republican candidate. And so, hopefully it'll be a really good, healthy, productive campaign season, and Saratoga will make a choice that's best for the city. But again, I just think it's hard fundamentally. Public Works has gone through so much with the passing of Skip. I know it broke all of our hearts, and especially was so hard for DPW. So then they will have someone new, coming in basically today. And then to have somebody new come in January 1, I think it would just be challenging. It would be really hard for them. And that's not what I want for DPW. I want the best, healthiest, most productive work in City Hall environment possible. And I just think that's a lot of change.
So as a former commissioner, are you endorsing Mr. Golub right now, or do you want to hold off?
Put her on the spot.
Screw you for asking me that question, Adam Israel.
These are the hard-hitting questions we ask here on Saratoga.
They are hard-hitting. As I said, I always want to do what's best for the city. That's always been my intention, whether it's been in my commentary or in my involvement in City Hall. And so, I think that it's so hard to understand these jobs until you start working in them. And so I think Jason is going to bring a degree of rational, logical thought, kind of more moderate voice to the city council. And I think that's really important on the city council level. How he meshes with Public Works, I wish him all the best. And I think that he is able to work with really a whole host of people. He was, in charge of corporate compliance at GE. That's a big job. He did a phenomenal job handling the police collaborative, which was a really intense and highly charged topic, environment, discussions. You had a lot of passion there, and he was able to manage that group really well. So, I'm optimistic for him in the Department of Public Works. But of course, at the same time, it tugged at my heartstrings that Commissioner Saratoga really wanted his son to be in that position. And that's not what happened. Of course, that sentimentality and that, emotion is hard to process. So I guess I don't have a clear answer for you, Adam.
Fair
just
enough.
yet.
All right. Well, moving on. I think.
But wait, really quick. Sorry. Can we just one more time? Can we just quickly acknowledge it's the first Black city council person we've had in the history of the city, and that is really a tremendous moment. There was no one from Black Lives Matter there last night supporting this or celebrating this, which I was kind of surprised again to see, because they have consistently said they wanted to see more people of color on the city council. And we know that this current city council didn't appoint a single person of color as either a deputy or to any of the boards and commissions. None of the BLM folks, and no one of color in general. And so I think that's just something we should acknowledge and give Commissioner-elect Golub some real praise for.
I agree, and if I could say, I reject, and I'm sure you agree with me, I reject the notion, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute when we talk about the Civilian Review Board. I reject the notion that Saratoga Springs is racist and so forth in the past, but I am thrilled that the city leadership is so much more diverse than it used to be. I love the diversity that the city leadership is evolving into, and and I don't want to make it just about him as
Yeah.
here, because he has Ivy League education, Columbia, an attorney at GE. He stands on his own, period. But I have some concerns that we'll talk about in the future about the city council and the direction they're taking us. But they are moving the ball in many ways. So let's give them credit where credit is due.
I was the first female public safety commissioner, and I'm just going to say, I never talked about it. It was important for me, and I was proud to have 2 women leading what had always been a traditionally male position. But I do hate identity politics. I think it's not something that I put on my resume. Just because I have the same physical parts as somebody else doesn't mean they have to vote for me. But
no, you
don't. But you just, it's impossible not to acknowledge the significance of the moment. And I do think that moving forward, I don't know if we'll continue to see the same level of diversity on the city council, simply because the way it's set up and the way these jobs pay. City council people, we make $220 a week. It is a $14,500 a year job for the mayor and all the commissioners. That's been the salary for the last like 20 years. How many people can work 70 hours a week for $220, or 70 hours a week for $220 a week? I mean, really, truly, how many people can make that commitment? Very, very, very few.
In another city that was this much of a tourist destination with this population, commissioners would make, or council members would make, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. The mayor would be at $170. It's absurd. It'd be a strong mayor form of government. So anyway, we're all going off on our little tangents here, but yes,
I know.
Generally agree with you.
All right, so should we move on to the Civilian Review Board?
Yes.
Okay, so James Montanino ran on a platform of putting together a civilian review that the last city council had already been doing. As part of the recommendation made to us by the police collaborative in March of 2021, Jason Goff, actually appointed to the police collaborative, the city attorney Tony Izzo, to put together a draft this past fall. It was widely criticized by the Democrats and the current city council as not having any teeth because it didn't have subpoena power, and it was really informed by Jason Golub, who had spent months and months researching different CRBs, putting together recommendations on what would be most successful for this community, also work within our charter. And he had the mindset of really neat, kind of incremental change, such that we have buy-in from the constituents, from the police department, and from the folks on the CRB, and that, he made a lot of points about subpoena power not necessarily being an effective tool, in that if you're at a point where you need a subpoena to get documents, information about a case or a complaint that's come in, be lost, because you want the police department to be already compelled to work with you and have a healthy relationship with the police department, so that they're not, hiding documents, that they want to, be collaborative in sharing information to resolve whatever complaint comes in. There were a couple other issues that were brought up, but I would say subpoena power is probably the biggest complaint that the Democrats and the Black Lives Matter group folks had. I don't know if Dan and Adam, you guys would agree with that, or if Dan, you recall any other like major complaints, but I would say that was their number one. Ultimately, it was pulled last November and saved for the city council to do. James Montanino has had public hearings on a civilian review board starting, I think, back at the first week in February, but he hadn't proposed anything. There was no proposal from him. It was just open public hearings for anyone who wanted to come and, like, I guess, generally weigh in about it. So for weeks and weeks and weeks and months, we have had these public hearings, but no proposal. And then I guess over like our spring break, which was 2 weeks ago, he posted this proposal for the civilian review board. I didn't see it. I don't know if you guys saw it. I follow this stuff really closely. I was away with my kids for it was the public school spring break. I saw it for the first time when it was attached to this agenda, which was on Monday. On Monday, I read the proposal. It was on the agenda as a discussion. There was no discussion and a vote. And it's a 9-page document. There's a ton of legalese. And so it's not something that I would say a normal person who doesn't have a legal background, such as myself, can read and fully understand until they talk to people who are kind of experts and get the opinion of the police department and get the opinion of, the other city council people and just the public in general before they vote on it and before we move forward. But what happened was that last night, instead, they decided to vote on it last night. And so there was really no opportunity for public input. I don't think that really anyone knows that this happened, but they did vote on the proposal last night. And so it's done, it's in place, it's moving ahead. And in my opinion, there was no opportunity for meaningful input, for changes, for, getting stakeholders to weigh in the way I had done it in the fall. And I found that to be really disappointing. Not to mention Jason Golub chaired this entire effort for like a year and a half practically, with a collaborative and then with a committee that Meg Kelly appointed him to, where he was in charge of the CRB and putting it together. They voted to put him on the city council last night. and then also voted on the CRB without allowing him an opportunity to weigh in when it was something that it was the effort that he had spearheaded for so long. So I don't know what you guys think, but I don't like the way this went down, and I'm not terribly optimistic about this CRB success.
I'll jump in here. What Jim Montanino proposed a few weeks ago was a different document, very similar, still a different document. That was a 6-page document, it was a 9-page document. Some of them were just simply tweaks. I get it. But I think, to your point, Robin, once he changed it, I think there needed to be a new vetting period. Even if it was only slight changes, the fact is it was changed. And also I didn't even think about the Jason Golub's missed opportunity, Commissioner Golub's missed opportunity to vote on the document he spent so much of his time on. So I do wish they would have waited a little bit. But the bigger picture here is, the document itself, the PBA, the leadership of the PBA, I still think going to have some issues with it. I don't know if the PBA signed off on it.
They had.
I'm sorry?
Sorry. I reached out to Sergeant Mullen, who is the current PBA president. I did not hear back from him. I reached out to a few other people in the leadership of the SSPD. They had not even, I think, received the document until just a few days ago. So they didn't have any opinion or feedback on it because they hadn't had an opportunity to go through it.
See the failure to do that, and again, I have not only police experience but a lot of police labor experience. The failure of the city to at least engage them. And when I dealt with the state of New York, they would sometimes have a document like this that they didn't want to say you have veto power, but they would give it to us well ahead of time and say, let us know if you've had any problems with it. And that was a very savvy way of avoiding litigation down the road. They say, well, you don't have veto power on this, but please let us know what you think. And if the city did not do that with this PBA, shame on them. And it sounds like, Robin, you're telling me they didn't, because it's going to cost us money. It may halt this if there is litigation down the road. So that will be a hard-learned lesson for them if that becomes the case. And I'm not saying the PBA is going to block it for the case of blocking it, but they have rights in the Taylor law and other laws that the city may have violated here. And the city could have avoided all that by simply having a conversation with them.
Also, Adam, I don't mean to keep jumping in here because I really want to get your thoughts, but one of the things that jumped out at me was that when we were trying to put this together, one of the big issues was how are you going to train the people who are going to be on the CRB to understand what the police department does and how they operate, and then also what their responsibilities are on the civilian review board. There's a lot of training and knowledge that needs to go into that before they start taking complaints. And Jason had been pulling different CRBs from around the country to see how they were doing it and make recommendations. But that was one of the most challenging parts. This proposal has the mayor's department funding and training the CRB. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, my issue with this is that being a centrist, we keep coming back to it. Just seems like the city council is us versus them. We know best. We're going to do what we want. And there's not a collaboration there. And if there's a collaboration, the collaboration is a false collaboration. It's a straw man collaboration. It's for show. It's not really saying, listen, we're all on the same team here. We're all here because we love this city. We want to serve this city. And how can we do this in the best way? Instead of saying, okay, you guys are the bad guys, or we're just gonna, we don't really seek your input. We don't value what you do. We don't value your service to our city. We're just gonna do this, and you guys deal with it. And again, that's not how organizations should run. Organizations should have collaboration because collaboration leads to buy-in and buy-in leads to success. So that's my issue with how this went down and was done. That it was just kind of shoved down the throats with this false input sessions in the past.
The qualifications for being on the CRB also are you have to be 18 years or older. You have to have been a resident for only 1 year, which I think is actually kind of weird. I can't imagine moving to a community, living here for a year, and then thinking like, you know what? I really want to be on the civilian review board and handle police complaints. I think 1 year is like not quite enough in terms of residency. You also cannot, they ask you if you've been convicted of a crime. I can't remember if it was just a crime or in general or a felony, but if you've been convicted, I got to pull this up. Actually,
I can tell you, Robin. I can tell you.
Yeah, can you?
It's a felony or a crime of moral turpitude. I think
that's what it is.
Fraud and moral turpitude.
Jim Montanino thinks that cheating on your spouse is moral. What was it?
Point.
So honestly, I mean, they put a policy in place in the police department that it's immoral and also illegal to cheat or have an affair. And if you have an affair in the police department, he asserts that that's now grounds for dismissal. So does that apply here? I wonder. Can you, if you've ever had an affair, does that disqualify you from being on the CRB?
Fortunately, no DA will convict on that. So I in the end, no. But you're right at the beginning. But if I could just make a point generally on this, is the policy itself, to me, is not so bad because it's really a recommendation to the commissioner. That's the power of this board, is it stops at a recommendation that the commissioner is authorized to reject, of course. The problem I have with this is, and it goes back to what I said a little bit earlier, is just like when the extreme right spews misinformation. Let's face it, the extreme left also spews information. It was just a couple weeks ago, the police were called subhuman right at a city hall council meeting. And these accusations of racism on this police department. I've seen bad police departments. They exist. Saratoga Springs Police Department is not a rogue police department. They're not a bad police department. They are an excellent police department. And what bothers me about these things, and we have to evolve, we have to move, we have to improve. I get that. But when it's done in the vein of it's a rogue police department and we have to reform it, here, we're going to start with a civilian review board. And I sense that here to some degree, at least. I'm bothered by the whole thing, and the whole thing is tainted. And maybe it's just to a degree packaging. But I want to get away from, I want to see the city council say, no, we have an excellent police department. We do not have a rogue police department. But
that would be nice, wouldn't it?
2022. We need to evolve and change a little bit and go, I can accept that. Haven't seen
Adam,
it yet.
Any thoughts, Adam?
No, I just go back to because obviously I've been not paying as much attention to this stuff as you guys have, but just coming back to this, we know best. We're not going to see collaboration. We're going to push it through kind of mindset the city council has that it, for me, doesn't sit well.
I'm just going to point out the wild freaking hypocrisy of this entire situation, because again, the city council voted on doing this in March of 2021. So we voted on it. And it was my responsibility, along with the Mayor Kelly, to make it happen. I worked with Jason Golub and Tony Izzo, the city attorney, to put a proposal together that really looks incredibly similar to what this proposal is. It was ripped to shreds by Saratoga BLM, by the current city council, by other people in the community who have been advocating for a civilian review board. I mean, they literally ripped it to shreds. They said it had no teeth. It was useless. It was pointless. It was do nothing legislation. They really hammered it. And that was okay. I mean, that was what I was seeking, was public input. And ultimately, the public was like, this is not a version that we are into. And so I'm like, all right, no problem. But I went through the motions and I got the feedback. How this was passed with zero criticism from those same groups, I'm sorry, it is just totally hypocritical and all political. Anyway, I know we're going long here, and I really, Adam, we all have been dying to know how you've been, how you just got back to Poland. You have been continuing this effort to aid the Ukrainian refugees and the crisis that's going on in Ukraine. How was your last trip, and just can you tell us about it in general?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll keep it brief, and maybe next show when there's not a council meeting, we'll go a little deeper. But just got back from Poland. This trip around, I went into Ukraine. Went to Lviv twice. As my kind of network grows of people who we're working with and supporting over there, it was time. It was really insightful. It was eye opening to go in to see what a country that's under attack looks like. I experienced my first air raid alarm. We were pulling up to the train station in Lviv to try to go help some people. Air raid siren goes off. Luckily, I was with some guys veterans who this is not their first air raid siren. They were there kind of helping me do some of my humanitarian work, and they talked me through what to do when this happens. Thank God there was no explosions, no blasts, but it was very jarring. Unfortunately, yesterday, Lviv, the city I was in, was hit by a couple Russian rockets. So that was a little disturbing. It was disturbing to see. You went to a site of a Russian cruise missile strike, and just to see what a missile hitting a tire factory looks like was eye opening. But it was there's a lot of people doing a lot of good, and I was just really moved by the opportunity to kind of spearhead this and to represent our city and our community, and kind of bring some relief to this country that's currently under attack.
Can I ask you, Adam, what your father, your husband, your experience in air raid warning, you're in a war, literally a war zone. What goes through your head then?
I guess it's, I don't want to get too much praise, because there are people, there are people out there actually fighting. There's fathers out there fighting. There's fathers on the front lines, but it's a calling. We've grown up, as kids, we grow up loving democracy, loving capitalism. Russia was always the bad part. I lost my grandfather in Vietnam, kind of defending the free world. So it's a feeling that I have the ability and to go over there and make a difference in a small way. And, it's really difficult for my family, but it's something that they understand that I have to do it. And so, and I guess, what we will, let's wrap this into cheers and jeers, right? Because this is, I'll start with and I'm going to do 2 cheers today, because I feel like thanking 2 different people. But first my family and my wife. She was not happy about this, but she held the family together. She held it together. It came home after being gone 3 weeks, and it didn't miss a step. I have a 9-year-old and 11-year-old. So Kasha.
Yay, Kasha.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
We love you, Kasha.
Yeah. Thank you for, I couldn't do this without her. So thank you to her. And then the second one is you meet a lot of the helpers while you're over there. I met some great people. Flew back and sit next to a guy who was there for 60 days with the World Central Food Kitchen. I always botch that name. And we just shared stories, and then he shared stories about how the relationships you make over there, you are, within hours of meeting somebody, you realize you're like-minded, and you form these bonds. And so when all the volunteers who are over there all finding their niche, everybody has their niche of what they can do and what they can provide. And people go over there and they find it, and all those little slices add up to a big pie. And so I just really want to thank everybody who I met this trip, and who's working with me and partnering with me to keep Letters of Hope for Ukraine going, and keeping the supplies and keeping the feelings and the letters and everything going over to Ukraine, so they know that we support them. So those are my 2 cheers for the day. My 2 cheers for the day.
Cheers.
Excellent.
Do you have a jeer?
No, I was thinking about a jeer, but I'll go with 2 cheers today, because that's
right.
That's where I'm at right now. I want to be happy right now.
We like it.
Right.
Dan, cheer, dear.
I likewise have 2 cheers this week. We're feeling really cheerful. Remember my typo earlier, and I wrote cheers and beers. So we got to do that someday. My first cheer is to Erica Miller of the Daily Gazette. She won the Photographer of the Year for the New York Press Association. Those either go to the track or have any involvement in Saratoga. She is ubiquitous in Saratoga, especially in the summertime. And she was a photographer for the Saratogian back in the day.
Yeah.
I have a special connection to her because 10 years ago, almost exactly 10 years ago, I was at an event when President Obama came to the Nanotech Center in Albany, and somehow I found myself in a position that I was in the front row. I leaned over. I shook President Obama's hand as he was leaving. I was the last person he shook his hand to, and I was thinking, God, that was great. Wish I could have had a picture of that. Well, 5 minutes later, my phone, beep. From Erica. She was across the room, spotted me, zoomed in with her great photography skills, got a great picture. I wish I would have sent it to you, Robin. You could have showed it. So I love Erica. Good for her. Congratulations, well deserved. My second cheer, and it's consistent with where Adam was at. To my wife Margarita, my mother-in-law Carmen, my mom up in heaven, Robin, you, Adam, your wife Kasha, and all the moms out here just before Mother's Day. Cheer to you for everything you do to keep families together. All the moms, and the biggest cheer I'll probably ever give, especially my wife Margarita holding it together.
Yay, moms!
Yay, moms! I know we've gone long. Let's just leave this on a cheerful note. You guys just did some great cheers. I'm just so happy to have you back. I'm happy to have this platform. I'm just always happy to have just healthy debate, discussion. I love doing this podcast with you guys, and I'm just happy to be here, happy to be back. So much good discussion.
So one other thing I want to slip in before we go. It was really cool. While I was over in Ukraine, I was interviewed by CNBC. So that'll be, yep. So on Friday, so that's why a lot of the stuff I did over there, I can't really share until they do the show. But I don't know the time yet. But Friday, CNBC, it's actually really cool because usually I come back with all this media, and I'm not a media savvy guy. I don't really know how to put it together and package it. So I don't know what the story is going to look like yet. But my feeling is they're going to do a great job putting together and packaging this last trip over there and everything we got done. So Friday,
that's awesome.
And follow the Letters of Ukraine for Hope Facebook page, and I'll put the exact time and place and a link to the show.
If I miss it, Adam, please make sure you get it to me so I can get it on Saratoga Report.
Absolutely, Dan.
Hey, Dan, send me that picture. I'll put it in comments. And Adam, send me that link so we can put it in comments. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We will be back next week with more Talking Saratoga.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
See you next time.